Or to the cloud. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is the Monday, December 29th, 2025 meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee, rescheduled from December the 17th. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, this meeting of the Somerville Community Preservation Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We will have a video recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. Roberta, could you call the roll, please?
Yes. Ryan,
Present.
Eric,
I'm here.
Mary Jo,
Here?
David,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
and that is all of you. I called David, right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So that leaves I don't have the agenda in front of me on the screen. Carlos, um, Joe, and Heather absent at the
And
moment.
John.
Yes, and John. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll try to pause and call out if we have folks that join in so we can include it on the minutes. Okay, first item on here is the approval of minutes from November the 19th. Any questions, comments from folks on the committee? I myself have one on the second page. I'm sorry, I guess it's page 3, under agenda item 3, the paragraph discussing Buddy's Diner. There's actually, in the final sentence, there's a kind of a motion or thought attributed to myself that I would love to just clarify and maybe restate if possible, related to supporting a small business being something. It says, well, that I personally will directly enjoy the benefits from investment, which is not, I think, the point that I had been trying to make in that comment. So
I think you meant you wanted to eat there, right?
I certainly would. But I would ask that maybe that sentence be rephrased to say that that in practice, a small business such as Buddy's or a replacement of Buddy's is open to all members of the Somerville public, whereas other investments, including in school-related projects, legally are open to all members of the Somerville community, but in practice may not be.
Yeah.
So that was the point, and I would like to maybe see if that could be rephrased.
I will wordsmith that.
All right. Thank you very much. Otherwise, I have no further objections.
Okay. I had one thing
That
I'd like to clarify in the item above that, agenda item 2 regarding the Kennedy schoolyard application. In the final paragraph, it talks about that I asked whether the city could bond the project out of the general fund instead of CPA, and if that's how it was construed, that's not what I meant. I meant the city bonded instead of the CPA bonding it or CPC bonding it. Not that it come out of the general fund. As I understood that was not, the interest. It was the question of why should we bond it instead of the city bond it?
I think I have the distinction. I'll revisit that.
Yeah, because I guess it's either you're bonding it or it's coming out of general funds. You wouldn't bond it from general funds.
Right. But it would be bonded from the city's
By the
fund.
city as opposed to us.
Yeah.
Roberta, do you
And
think that would be like a CPA specific borrowing versus a general borrowing?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because that was the point I was trying to make, and I'm probably going to end up making it again today.
okay. Okay, I will capture that. I'll do a little bit of a rewrite and capture that.
Okay. Thank you, Roberta. Any other comments on this one? Okay, hearing none. With the two proposed amendments to this, can I have a motion to otherwise accept these meeting minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
All right, and I will call the roll. Ryan,
A yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Michael.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item of business is a review of the fall report. Roberta, you want to take us through this?
Sure. So pardon me while I read from notes that I wrote to guide me before I went away on vacation. I want to make sure that I capture exactly what I had intended and efficiently because we really want to try to get a lot done this evening. So the financial report is in the meeting packet. I didn't intend to take time to review the financial report right now. Normally, we review this at our November meeting, but you recall that we didn't have all of the data at the November meeting that we do have now. The short version is that the City Council adopted the corrected budget. So that's the budget that the CPC originally approved last spring. The City Council has now adopted that budget. So that's a larger amount of money that's available than what the City Council had previously approved. And the financial workbook showing all of the projects that could be funded this funding round has been updated with the available funding based on the corrected budget. So I'll walk everyone through the financial workbook, but first I wanted to ask if you had any questions about the financial report. All right.
All right.
Then I will pull up the financial report. I mean the financial worksheet, and I'm going to share the screen. Take me a moment to find where it lets me share screen. I don't know why I'm feeling a little bit lost in Zoom today. There. Okay. And so you should be able to see the screen now. Okay. So the total funding available. Now I need to hide things on my screen so I can see what I want to show you. The total funding available is 3.7 million. That's the funding that is I'm sorry. Okay. The budgeted FY26 funds available for open space and recreation and historic preservation. Actually, why don't I start with the budget so we can see the budget? So this is the final budget that was approved with a surcharge revenue of 6.7 million. And the state match, we are using the actual state match because this we received the actual state match, which was just a tiny bit higher than what we had budgeted in the spring. So the total funds available this year is 7.2 million. And of that, the community housing would would receive 55%, and that's 3.9 million. Less debt service for housing leaves 3.3 million that would be available from this year's revenue, and more about the housing to come. And so that leaves 1.3 million for open space and recreation, 815,000 for historic resources, and 726,000 for the budgeted reserve. So the amount available for open space, recreation, and historic preservation is 2.8 million. And so that is plugged in to here on this chart, 2.8 million. And then I looked at the available undesignated fund balance. This is the portion of the undesignated fund balance that is actually available for the committee to use right now. I've already reduced this by the amount shown in the fall report that has to be held until next year because it hasn't been um, because of the state accounting rules. Um, so this is the available undesignated fund balance. So that leaves a total of 3.7 million that's available for these three program areas right now. And the total request is 3.1 million. So you technically have enough funds available right now, dipping into um, the carried over funds from last year to cover all of the requests. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to or want to cover all of the requested funds. You can make the choice based on the merits of the projects and strategically based on how you feel is the best use of CPA funds. Um, the more on the housing adjustment that I mentioned in the annual fall report, maybe it would be helpful if I were to open that document. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so I can walk through the how I derived what the housing adjustment should be. Um, Now I'm just going to open the wrong meeting packet. Okay. And I will share the meeting packet or share the financial report. So last year, we received additional funds above what was budgeted. That includes all these miscellaneous funds here. The surcharge was larger than anticipated in FY25. There are some miscellaneous receipts in FY25, investment income, and the state match was a little bit bigger in FY25 than what we had accounted for in the budget. So there's $740,000 of unappropriated revenue from FY25, plus 57,000 of unspent administrative funds. So a total of 798,000 was added to the undesignated fund balance last year. Of that, I mentioned earlier, there's a portion that has to be held until next year. That's the unappropriated revenue. So I've subtracted from the undesignated fund balance that's available this unappropriated revenue. So that will be available next year. This amount, the unspent administrative funds, would be available. So that's part of the 798 that was added to the undesignated fund balance. So these are funds that, in order to stay true to the distribution that the committee voted on last spring, should 50% of this amount of the FY25 revenue should be allocated to the Affordable Housing Trust. So we'll keep that in mind. The table 5 of the report shows the housing, so the 50%, and that's 50% because it was FY25. 50% of the unappropriated FY25 revenue is 399,000, and that's transferring from the undesignated fund balance. In addition, now that we have a larger budget than what was approved by City Council in this spring, the housing reserve from FY26 is larger. So the total amount that should be distributed to the Affordable Housing Trust is the FY26 distribution plus the transfer from the undesignated fund balance for the remaining FY25 funds. And we've already given the Affordable Housing Trust 2.6 million. We did this, the committee voted back in June to send 2.6 million to the Affordable Housing Trust. So that leaves 1,167,395 as a additional distribution to the Affordable Housing Trust to stay true to the share that was promised. So in the worksheet, this is reflected. I'm going to share the screen again with the worksheet. The housing adjustment is a transfer from the undesignated fund balance. And this is also subtracted from the available undesignated fund balance. So I have in this spreadsheet a recommendation that the committee can vote on later, no rush, to appropriate 1,167,000 to the Affordable Housing Trust, of which 768,000 comes from current FY26 revenue and 399,000 comes from the undesignated fund balance. So that is, I think, everything that I have to say about the fall report and the calculations of the available funds. Any questions now?
I had two questions. One super quick, and then maybe one you can elaborate on a little bit more. Um, when you were showing how the state contribution, and I think it was like 500,000 or whatever the order, maybe I have that wrong, but
Mhm.
is there a trending? And I hear this not so much just with the city of Somerville and what we get from the state for CPA, but other communities when they talk, or as more communities jump on and become CPA communities. Um, is it accurate to say that we should, to be honest with ourselves, expect to get less and less from the state as time goes on? And are we seeing that trend already play out?
That is accurate. In the spring report, I have a financial history and
Hmm.
it shows what the match has been since for as long as Somerville has participated in the program.
Yeah,
And I don't happen to have that open right now, but it's on our webpage under the
sure.
documents, and you
Okay.
can go and refer to that and see what the trend has been. But that is, in short, yes, you're
Okay.
correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're already aware and being honest with ourselves that that state match figure will continue to gently trend downward.
Hmm.
Okay, okay. Then my other question was um, regarding the amount that the Affordable Housing Trust receives, and obviously it's increased our what we are now overall our figure has doubled in a way because the percentage is now higher than it was before and so on. But I guess if I was stopped on the street by a citizen and they wanted me to speak intelligently on how the progress is going with the Affordable Housing Trust's projects related to the chunk of CPA money they get, I'm feeling ignorant. Like, should I be watching their meetings or how can I feel like it's not that I don't trust them. I know they're doing amazing work. I just feel really ignorant. And now as the numbers are getting bigger, it just feels like a lot more average people are going to take an interest in it. And I want to make sure I'm schooled in it well.
That's a great question. So the Affordable Housing Trust prepares a report to the CPC every year that's due June 30. And so we received a report and had a presentation
Right,
by the Affordable Housing Trust, the staff person to the Affordable Housing Trust last summer.
right.
And so again, the annual plan, and I think our webpage has a link to the Affordable Housing Trust action plan, not action plan. They do have an action plan, but their annual report to the CPC is linked from our webpage. So
Mm.
you can see what the trust has been doing.
Yep.
Um, but it's a fair question. If the
I, I
committee,
I guess I knew they did the annual presentation, so I
yep.
remember that, and I knew they do a report, and it's very thorough. But do they? I should know this, and I'm just so embarrassed. I don't. Do they have like monthly meetings and the public attends them virtually or anything like that? Or do they just chug along doing, in other words, as their projects are advancing or getting stalled or whatever, is it a year before the broader community kind of knows how things are going?
Yeah, they have open meetings just as this
Okay.
committee has open meetings. So you could attend the meetings monthly and learn more about what projects are
Okay.
on the table with the Affordable Housing Trust.
Sounds good. Thank you. Sorry to ask such a remedial question, but as the
It's,
numbers get bigger,
yeah,
many sets of eyes will take an interest in this. And aren't we lucky as a city that we have the resources to devote that much to affordable housing since it's so critical to the city? So it's all good. I just want to make sure that I'm not asleep at the switch and not knowledgeable. That's all.
yeah.
Okay.
To Mary Jo's point, and Roberta, correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't correct me if I'm wrong. Did they used to report more frequently and we reduced it?
Yes, actually, before the pandemic, before my time, they had a practice of reporting twice a year to the CPC.
I think it was actually during my time, so it was later
Okay.
than that. Because you were already on board and we were already in the pandemic. But I think when I started, it was twice a year.
It
That's my vague recollection, but I could totally be wrong about that.
Yeah, I think that we might have had them meet with us twice because they were catching up on not having
Oh,
done it for a long time.
maybe.
Um, there was a lapse of any reporting before I came on board. Even though the CPC had as a condition in their grant agreements that they should report twice a year, they had kind of fallen off the trend of reporting. So I gave them a template to use for reporting and asked them to, you know what you may recall is that initially I asked them to give a different report each year. I mean, each, because we asked them to report twice a year, I asked them to give us a revenue report just one time, and then later in the year, a spending report.
Okay, maybe.
And
I think that's
they,
probably what I'm remembering is because they were
that's
definitely, I felt like they were before us more than once a year.
Yeah, so they did. They gave us a revenue report for for like the 6 month period, and then 6 months later came in and
Mhm.
gave us a spending report. And they didn't keep up with that schedule. They were falling behind. So the next year, I asked them to prepare both as a single report, and then ever since then to just submit a single report. Um,
And does our agreements with them though still have the language you cited about reporting twice a year? Or that been
No,
changed?
last year I think
Last
the
year we changed it,
committee
I think.
voted to change the agreement
Yeah.
to allow them to report once a year with the template that we gave them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments on the report that Roberta just shared?
I have just one quick, I think, easy question. Earlier on, Roberta, you had a sheet that showed us how you had arrived at the 800 whatever number that from which we divided up the portion that goes to the affordable housing folks.
Yep.
Is that number also, we also have a balance that we carry forward that was the undesignated funds or whatever. Are
Yeah.
those the same allocations in your spreadsheet? I was a little confused.
So let me pull up the spreadsheet again and share that with you and walk through it
Well,
together.
thank you for asking that, Eric. I was thinking the same thing
Oh,
when I saw that, whether that was the reserve that we have kind of said we
Yeah.
want to, hold back.
So the unappropriated hold is $740,000. And we're also carrying over the Adams Magoon amount that the CPC recommended a few years ago. And so subtracting the um I'm sorry, subtracting the unappropriated hold and the Adams Magoon, the net carried over is 878,000. Um, so the a question for the committee. I don't think we have a policy on this. The policy was that you should hold $750,000 for just in case. Um, does that 750,000 need to be money that you can spend now? In which case it would need to come out of the net carried over. Or does the 750,000, could that be the unappropriated hold be part of that 750,000? In which case you're almost there just with the unappropriated hold.
But to be clear, so you're saying, like, for example, the money that we're holding for Adams Magoon House would count toward that 750?
Um,
Am I following what you're suggesting?
the no, the Adams Magoon House wouldn't count toward the 750. So the two amounts that we're seeing are just subtracting the Adams Magoon House off the top. What's left is unappropriated hold. That's the FY25 revenue that we never appropriated, and everything else that's left. This is basically what was the unappropriated funds in FY24, plus the unspent administrative funds are now the net carried over that we're allowed to spend this year.
and that's
Um,
what's allowing us to fund everything this year if we want.
yes,
So that
yes.
other 400, whatever 50, half of which we just talked about allocating, is that showing up on our spreadsheet as well someplace?
That would be subtracted the from this number, from the net carried over.
We can't see your screen right now, by the way, if you're
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was sharing it. Thank you for reminding me. Oh, I can see I almost shared it and then didn't. Okay. So,
Okay.
this is the total undesignated funds, the unappropriated hold, and then the net carried over,
I see.
having subtracted Adams Magoon off the top. So the housing adjustment would be coming from the net carried over. And I just want to um, shrink you guys a little bit so I can see the undesignated fund, the total, the total undesignated fund balance. Yeah, so this is the total undesignated fund balance that we can spend right now. And the 399 is coming out of that.
okay. So to kind of summarize and bring us to a punchline on this, because I think we need
Mhm.
to move probably into the projects here soon. The
Yeah.
punchline to me, correct me, Roberta, is that what we have in front of us tonight is 10 projects requesting $3.129 million. We have a total available to us to spend on those 10 projects. So setting aside anything related to the housing budget of 3.726, which means if we were to fund everything as proposed from the 10 projects we're looking at, we
Mhm.
have left over as our slush fund, our reserve, whatever you want to call it, for the rest of the year out of round projects of 597,842 as shown in column I. Is that
Yeah.
correct, the way I just summarized?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so this is all that 878,000 that it is boosting our total available number, that is after having already removed the incremental funds that are being given to the housing program, correct?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful to folks to kind of
Yeah, that's great, Ryan. Thank you.
draw a line on where we're headed.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe with that, I think there was one other item on the agenda before we get into the project deliberations about the art farm bonding request. Roberta, would you mind speaking to that?
Yes. I'm going to stop sharing and see if we. So I might have had due to my having my tuning in from vacation, I might have had a miscommunication with the PSUF division. I was going to have someone from PSUF here to talk about this, but they aren't here, I think because they might not have been sure that this meeting was happening because I didn't communicate with them. So I will talk through this as best as I can. All of the data is in here, and obviously, if we need to have someone from PSUF to represent the conversation, then we'll have to continue this until next month. But I will go back into my notes. So I needed to have someone from PSUF give a quick update on the art farm budget and timeline. They are anticipating that they're going to be requesting bonding for Art Farm in FY27. And I prepared a bond projection just for discussion purposes so that you can all see approximately how the budget would look if both the Kennedy School and Art Farm were bonded this year. So obviously, Art Farm isn't being requested this year, but just to give you a picture of what it would look like, um, the request will actually be staggered over at least 2 years, and the actual borrowing might occur later than what's shown in the simulation. And the budget and bonding request for Art Farm would still have to be finalized and depend on other grants that they're applying for. And they're actually hoping to have at least a nod from the CPC, get a sense of your reaction to the potential to bond both Kennedy School and Art Farm so that they can give an indication of the city's willingness to commit funding in the future to the Art Farm project. They don't actually need to make the commitment now, but they need to make a statement about the intention and the probability of having city funds in their grant applications that would support the project. So, with that intro, I will pull up the debt service calculation spreadsheet. This is all in your meeting packet. And I will share the screen now. Um, Debt service calculations, share. Okay, so we're looking at the debt service calculations document right now. So the projected FY27 budget, so there's a full calculations. We're looking at the summary sheet. The total available funds projected for FY27 is 6.2 million, is actually $7.7 million. And we already have debt service, existing debt service for affordable housing and historic preservation. And there's a request right now to bond the Kennedy schoolyard, and say we put in the additional request for Art Farm, the total debt service for open space and recreation would be $437,000 annually. So the total of all of the debt service would be $1.1 million annually. And just, I wanted to give a sense of scale of how the bonding would compare to the total funds available in each category. For affordable housing, the debt service is currently about 14% of the available funds. For historic preservation, about 13%. And with these two projects, the debt service would be about 31% of the available budget for open space and recreation alone. Um, and this is assuming a conservative 14% state match going into the projected budget. So any questions about that?
Yes, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The and it's entirely likely, in fact, probable. It's on the spreadsheet you're always sharing with us. But the debt service for affordable housing, the 596,000,
Yeah.
is that taken out of the 50%, now 55% that we give each year before we then make the 55%? So that's
Yes, it is.
okay. So that's coming out of the affordable housing portion, I mean, to be
Yes.
there. Okay.
And is the term on most of those bonds 20 here? Is that a customary duration?
It varies actually. When I look at the full, um, this is Alan got an instant headache when I showed him this, and he said, please don't show anybody the calculations. But I knew I would get questions that I would need the calculations for. So I am looking for the answer to the question that you gave me. So the um, current housing debt, current historical debt. The housing debt finishes in FY 46. The historical debt finishes in FY 44. And the proposed open space debt would finish in FY 41.
So nothing
Yep.
changes for a long time.
And
Yeah.
and generally speaking, the terms vary depending on different criterias of different projects, and their, depreciation life. Different bonds will have different terms. So some projects may be like a 20-year amortization schedule, some may be as short as I believe like 15.
Yeah.
But generally they're between 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Right, no,
These
as far as
are the assumption is 15 for this analysis.
right. But do you assumed 15 or these are specific to the bonds that we previously underwritten?
So these are the actual debt service schedules
Yeah, okay.
for the bonds that were previously written. This assumes 15.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's as much information as I think I can give you. If PSUF were here, they could tell you more about there is a timeline for the Art Farm schedule project that is also, I just added, I think, no, that was Blessing of the Bay that I just added to the meeting packet. So the timeline for Art Farm, as far as I know, is that they are still finalizing the budget and the design, and they won't be requesting funds until they find out whether they are able to get the grants that we're currently applying for. And then they'll have a more concrete understanding of how much money they need to request for Art Farm.
But the debt service as you calculated it for those two projects is this 437,909? And if what I recall from the presentation last month is the projected debt service for Kennedy was 170.
Right.
So the the 437 minus 170 is the debt service, the anticipated debt service for Art Farm.
Yes, I'm going to projected schedules. So the Kennedy Schoolyard would be a $2 million request, and Art Farm would be a $3 million request.
And
And so that is what results um, in the
and
payments that we see.
so again, going back to the table you had above, that 437 would represent 31% of the anticipated annual budget.
Yes.
Okay.
It would probably be something less than that because this is the FY27 budget, and that full amount wouldn't kick in until probably FY 28, 29.
Right, but for planning purposes, for
Yeah,
the
for
next
planning
15
purposes.
years beyond that, that would be the sort of debt service we'd be carrying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roberta, if I heard you right, you said that the Art Farm project team is still waiting to hear on some other grant funding before they firm up their ask for CPA. But for now, when you said the budget we're anticipating will be 3 million, that's what we think it will be. It could be maybe more, maybe less, depending on how they do with those grants.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it. Okay. Helpful FYI, obviously not for this year, and they have not even made a formal presentation to us of,
Mhm.
theoretically, we have members that don't even know what Art Farm is because we haven't heard this. Yeah, Mary Jo, I'm relatively uneducated on Art Farm too. So in any case, that's good info to have in the back of our minds.
Yeah,
Um,
and the reason why this is particularly relevant to share with you this evening is because the full request for the $2 million for the Kennedy School is on the table for this evening.
yeah,
So I felt that it would be important for the committee to have the big picture context of what's being asked, so that you can make a decision about the Kennedy School with that information.
And a reason that I especially am appreciative of us having this conversation now and not half of it now and half of it in a year is to understand, like you alluded, a number of the members aren't that familiar with Art Farm. I actually am vague about who Art Farm are. Is it a private thing? Is it a private public partnership? Is it the city? Who is it actually that they,
So, do you know where the Spring Hill sewer installation is?
yeah,
The pump
yeah, where they put
station?
in the pump station. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So when that is completed and they level it off, they're going to be installing a permanent park
And,
on the
who
surface.
and who is they?
City.
Okay. And so the city is calling this facility Art Farm.
Art Farm is a name that goes back to a vision for this project that was for this parcel that was conceived before my time. There's some history of it in an application. I think it was from 2019, maybe 20, maybe earlier. Um, that's in our back prior
Mhm.
applications. And we've seen some presentations about it in the last year or two as well,
Mhm.
with updates on the timeline. It was originally conceived before they decided to build the pump station there, and then they had to put the project on hold while they um, took care of the infrastructure installation. And now that that's nearing completion, they're ready to move forward with installing the park. And when it was originally conceived, there would be a barn. They called it the art barn. That would be a community space, indoor community space. And that isn't funded, to my knowledge. That is specifically excluded from using CPA funds for that because it's not a qualified use of CPA funds. And that was always understood that they were going to find additional sources of funding for that.
yeah. Okay. Thank you for the background there. I think I am, if we're okay, I'm going to move us on into the projects
Okay.
because that one is not before us for consideration, and I don't, I think that's helpful information, but also I don't want to color our discussion of the Kennedy School tonight with a project that is not up for consideration. So if folks are okay, I'd like to go on into our 10 projects. We have an hour and 10 minutes to get through as many of these as possible. And then I know we have some year-end turnover. I don't think any of this group is turning over. I know Heather will. David, you are? All right. So let's crack on then and get through as many of these as we can. I think how I would like to start in terms of order of events here is to share the results of our prioritization poll that folks really helpfully filled out after our last meeting. Roberta, if you don't mind just sharing the grant tracking detail tab again.
Yep.
They're actually on there. I don't know if folks noticed in their meeting packet that it was just tucked in there as a column, the scores. But the top priority vote getter was the Peabody House, followed by a two-way tie for second between the Buddies Project and the Kennedy Schoolyard. After that, three-way tie for fourth between Somerville Vets and the Vida Real and the Somerville Housing Authority Open Space Project. Seventh was the Grace Baptist Church on Cross Street. The Blessings of the Bay after that in eighth, and then tied for ninth, the museum and the open space acquisition. So given some of these will have, I think, more robust discussion than others, but I would like to clear as many off of our docket tonight as I can. So based upon the prioritization, maybe let's start by talking about the Peabody House, if no objections from anybody. Folks will recall that it was a request for $420,566. I think we talked through the scope a lot in our last two meetings. Maybe Roberta, I don't know if you want to offer any, kind of high level context on how we should be evaluating these projects. I know that was something you said you wanted to touch on before we took motions and voted.
Sure. So, I I just want to be clear. I want to make sure you said that you wanted to start with the Elizabeth Peabody House.
Please.
Okay. So my suggestion would be for any committee members to identify with each project if this is a project that they would not support recommending funds for. And if you're not comfortable voting to recommend this project, I think we should have some discussion about that. But if you are comfortable voting to recommend the project, I can pull up the recommendation letter and we can look at the conditions and see if you'd like to add any conditions, and you can vote on to recommend the project. We can have further discussion if you need to, but I am especially interested in getting feedback to pass back to the grantees if you do not want to recommend their project. But if you do want to recommend their project, we're mostly interested in what are the conditions that you would require.
That's great. And the one other kind of caveat off the top, Roberta, and I add in if I miss anything, but just wanted to reiterate to folks that we are really focused primarily on the physical assets and their value to the broader Somerville community here, and not, to be clear, on the programming or the activities undertaken in any given building. I think we admire a lot about what a lot of these groups do that have applied, and rightly so, but just want to make sure that we are focused on really the preservation or the physical aspects of these apps as they came in. So okay, with that then, I guess following Roberta's lead and starting with Peabody House, anybody with any objections or reasons why we would not fund this award in the way that it was requested?
Well, I'll stick my neck out.
Go ahead.
So my recollection of it is that it was to reinforce the second floor flooring so that the space could be used more productively, by the tenants. Is that a accurate recollection?
My notes say it's to reinforce the second floor beams and joists to restore usability, and putting in sister roof trusses and extra blocking to ensure that the roof remains structurally safe.
The roof, not the floor. The roof.
That's what I had in my notes
Yeah,
here.
okay.
Yes.
So I guess what I would, and so in my own notes, I was thinking, it seems like a fine project, although I do, as we're talking about it, I'm not really sure, are all of these features of this building historically significant, or is this a kind of a regular architectural reinforcement job? Because is it anything that has to be done in a historically accurate manner?
I would venture a response that one of the allowable uses for CPA funding is to um, make code improvements as necessary for the asset to function for its intended use.
Okay.
So, for example, they explicitly call out accessibility improvements. In this case, the improvement that's needed is to bring it up to the load-bearing
Okay.
code.
Yeah. All right. No, that seems fair. It's certainly no different than adding an elevator, I suppose. We're not adding historically, accurate elevators.
Yeah.
Um,
A little sort of splitting hairs, but following up on the distinction that Ryan brought up at the beginning here. The goal of this is to allow an additional programming to occur in that building, which technically we're not really evaluating on the basis of the programming that occurs in the building. So what the money is going towards is just a sort of a blanket usability, increasing the area of the building that can be used by the owner. From a historic preservation angle, there's nothing about this. Well, the roof, obviously, maintaining the structural integrity of the building for its ongoing existence is important. Um, would allowing the second floor to handle different sort of use than it does now be that? I don't know. Currently, it's probably legitimate for storage or things like that that doesn't handle the different kind of loading that the use would be. So um, I'm kind of ruminating there, but I think to me that the act of allowing this building to be used, period, by the current owner kind of kicks it in that threshold of usability, kind of like elevators would or anything else. If it were to facilitate it being used as choir practice or some particular unique use to that thing, then maybe we'd say, well, then it's not really historically relevant. It's more because they want to have this one particular function.
So the fact that at the current moment it can't be used at all for anything other than dead storage, we're not being prescriptive about use, active use, the type of use. We're just making it available for active use.
That's right.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess all I was trying to summarize was the thought that we can't say I like this activity that takes place and I don't like that activity that takes place.
um,
In this instance, we if we were to fund this, just what you said, Mary Jo, we would be making more usable space within a historic asset for the community. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
and I guess, and Eric kind of made it the point. I guess I was leaning the reason it was a 2 for me and not a 1 was really in regard to it comparison to the other projects. Like everything else being equal, I would fund it. If there's some other project we can't afford, then this was a lower priority because the building itself didn't seem to be in immediate peril. And if another
Understood.
project, it needed new windows to avoid X happening,
Yeah.
that I was ranking higher.
Understood.
And so that's why in me it's kind of part of the whole picture is that, yeah, if we can do this, I would do this. But I don't know if we can do this until we discuss, well, actually, I guess Roberta's summary in the beginning suggests, well, yeah, we can afford to fund all of these. So
Yeah. Yep, that's true. Appreciate that perspective, David, and thanks for sharing your prioritization vote. I mean, I know we don't have all of our colleagues here, but it was the top vote getter, the highest priority amongst the broadest number of folks
Mhm.
here. So, okay. Any other kind of reasons we would not fund this? And maybe I'll just pause there. Any other questions or clarifications before we maybe go towards a motion?
Maybe I can just talk a little bit about the conditions.
Sure.
The So for this project, I have not identified any unique conditions for this project because they already have a preservation restriction. And this is a continuation of a project that we've already funded in the past. So any restrictions that we've applied in the past are still effective on this building. So the request of the committee would be to vote to recommend the award of $420,000, $420,566 from the Historic Preservation Reserve. And I'm going to correct a typo on the letter that I see right now.
Sounds good. And then maybe if you don't mind sharing on the screen the memo, and then maybe we can ask for a vote to accept it as drafted if folks want to support it
Yep.
or put it to vote. Okay, so we're following the general conditions.
Mm.
Understood. Okay, very good. Anything else on this, Roberta, that we should put eyes on?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that's
Okay, sounds good. Any other last questions or comments? And if not, I would love to welcome a motion if anybody would like to make.
Guess I would make the motion then that we accept how do we usually phrase these things? The
to recommend the funding.
recommend funding of this project subject with the conditions spelled out in this document we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right.
All right. Then I will call the roll. Ryan,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
uh, Mary Jo,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
and David.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
Excellent.
We have finished that project.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right. Next one. Again, going by the order of the priorities, they were joint to have 1.29 average priority between Buddies and the Kennedy Schoolyard. So let's start with Buddies, if that's okay, since
Sure.
Kennedy has some other considerations related to the bonding capacity.
Yeah.
So this one had a pretty robust dialogue in our meeting last month. We talked about this being a private business as the recipient. We talked about wanting to include potentially conditions related to this project receiving other funds that would make it feasible, as they have kind of a lot of irons in the fire, it sounds like, from other groups, to make this a reality. I guess, is anybody a hard against or a skeptic about this project right now after having discussed it? Okay. Um, the maybe Roberta, can we look at the draft for this one and maybe talk through the conditions, since that had been
Yeah.
a topic?
So for the conditions for this project, I anticipate at our next meeting in January, we will have a report from the consultant with recommendations for what we would use for conditions in the grant agreement. So I fudged a little bit to enable you to vote tonight to apply conditions to be determined. So I stated the grantee will consent to general conditions provided in the grant agreement, which shall include a provision to ensure long-term preservation of the historic asset. We don't know yet what that's going to look like. And then I also added, based on the commentary at our discussion last month, that the Worcester lunch car will not be relocated outside of Somerville.
Is there any, and maybe this is in the general conditions, but any ability to put in a clawback provision related to, okay, we fund this, we transfer the funds, but other funding doesn't come through and the project ends up in the same place in a year, 2 years, 3 years from now as it is today? Is there anything to capture that?
So I anticipate that the consultant recommendations will include a clawback in the case that the conditions are not met or the property, that it loses its historic value um, for any reason. A clawback based on their ability to reopen um, as this particular business, I think I'm not sure. That's something that we could examine.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally, I wouldn't advocate for that because there's a world in which this gets fixed up and becomes a viable place, but then is sold and is maybe used for something else. But as long as the historic asset is preserved, that's still a
Yeah.
result that is within the CPC scope. So yeah, maybe there's
It seems like um, it shouldn't, whatever we come up with, shouldn't be so restrictive or have any kind of penalty if the current property owner operator, if they get the building stabilized, but for whatever reason, don't then have the wherewithal to be the restaurant operator.
that's right. That's right.
Someone else could be that operator, or they could sell it to another restaurant operator kind of thing. So as a tenant or another purchaser, I maybe this is just my own personal view, but it doesn't necessarily seem to detract from the goal if some other entity becomes the operator of the diner. It'd be great if it's the current party because they're trying to make this work.
Yeah.
But if it ends up being someone else who does a restaurant there, that's still preserving a Worcester Lunch Car as a diner. So I hope that change of ownership or change of tenancy wouldn't become a blemish to them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I like how you said the goal should be stabilization of this property, not necessarily the opening of something, be it a restaurant, be it a whatever, a tiny bookstore, be it a place handing out tourism pamphlets. Like those, that's all kind of beyond our scope, I think. Um, so, but I don't know how we would formally say, okay, is this stabilized or is it not? Maybe this, maybe we're just getting into the realm where this needs to be a recommendation from the historic consultant, and and we go off their advice. I don't know. David, Michael, any other like Eric? Any thoughts on how we could formalize having stabilization as a goal?
I can't think of it. So this was for plumbing changes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was to put in new sewer pipes.
That's
And
a portion of it. A portion of it is about the emergency work to get it, I guess, back to workable order. But then it's also the study to figure out what would be needed to bring it up to historic.
right. Okay. I think, well, I mean, technically, following up on our previous case, we can't really dictate the programming. If this becomes, like you said, a tourist brochure handout station, we can't allocate
Yeah.
this money with the goal of it remain a restaurant. We want the building to remain usable.
Yeah.
And I have no problems giving money. I guess the question is if it gets sold next year after we stabilize it, and this goes back to what the consultant will tell us. What do we expect some money back because we improved their appreciating property value because we put money into it? I personally think that the value in keeping this there, it's like with everything else that we're giving money for, it's an historic resource, keeping it alive. And whether someone, anytime you improve on a historic resource, it becomes more valuable. So um, I don't really have a benchmark. So if I mean, what would you say if it's sold converted to a use that no longer needs this? No, because we'll have spent it at that point. So I can't think
Yeah.
of conditions where we'd actually claw it back based on the future owner type.
And
Okay. Oh,
and
go ahead, David.
are there any historic building preservation? Yeah, is there any lock on this building?
It's
I think
historic district, right?
it's in a
Is it?
district, so it's already protected. It can't be modified
So in
externally.
that regard, is our second condition, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but is the second condition not necessary because they can't?
Well, we don't want it to leave the city,
Well,
though.
can they take it away if it's in the district?
Technically, well, not unless if the commission were to agree to it for some reason.
I'm
But
just wondering
Yeah,
if we need that second condition.
I think it's worth leaving that in there just in case as a second protection. Like, to
Okay.
Eric's point, you
Okay.
could redistrict and remap
Right.
things, and this just really make sure it stays there.
But I guess but going back to it, to Eric's point, I think any building that, anytime if there's going to be a building there, my guess is to get any sort of an occupancy certificate, they're going to have, working sewage and whatever else, so,
yeah,
so almost irrespective of, if we're going to be able to have people in there, I assume it needs to have, working, sewer connections. So in
Yeah,
that
I think
something we need, that is needed, to preserve it as a usable, building.
Yeah, I think you're starting to go in the same direction I'm thinking, which is at the end of the day, like they're working towards getting a stabilized building. That's been their intention throughout the application process. That's everything that they're doing, and I feel like making the conditions a little bit gray or squishy
I,
could lead to confusion
I,
and the lack of a release of funds in the future. So I would go so
if,
far as to
if,
say,
if,
upon receipt of a report from that general contractor, the funds are released. Like not necessarily having some special evaluation later or anything like that. Just making sure they do that report that they're making the right steps. That's enough for me to at least feel comfortable with it
yeah,
personally.
if we were to do a clawback though, I think what I would want to see is because I do hope that they still have other legal avenues to get another party to pay for this work.
Yeah.
It seems like another party should be paying for this work. And if there were, and it was in that circumstance, I think it would be nice if we could get our money back. If NSTAR or Eversource or whoever it was that, they claimed did the damage ended up ever being found culpable and wrote them a check for it, then it would be nice for us to get our money back.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, it,
But that might be the only circumstance where I would really want
yeah.
clawback.
Um,
Roberta, does this application have the standard condition of if they resell it, they owe us that money back that we talked about in other projects? But that hasn't been changed yet, right?
we've never actually applied that standard condition. We've talked about it before, but I think that's one of the things that the consultant will evaluate is whether it makes sense to have a condition that the funds be repaid if the project property is sold.
Wait, maybe I'm
Since
confused. I thought we were talking about removing it through this consultant process, but like that's what got
okay,
Slogan
yeah.
stuck. Yeah.
Um, So there was one project, the Adams Magoon House, where the recommendation, that was one of the recommendations, but that's actually the applicant didn't agree to those conditions, and so that project hasn't moved forward. So yeah, that is something, and the condition was that if it was resold within 50 years, it
Yeah.
would have to be repaid.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
So I would recommend to this group that we avoid like changing around the precedent until we have that report and analysis and understanding that we can kind of actually have a hearing around on that topic. But at the end of the day, I think the relative dollars are not that high here, and so I'm not that strongly opinionated. I just think we should not try to go down a rabbit hole of debating that topic tonight.
yeah. So I have been thinking about the issue that you raised of what if they are successful in court and get the utility company to pay for the project. So the grant that you'd be recommending is for a specific scope to repair the sewer and to do the historic preservation architectural assessment. And if the sewer gets repaired in the meantime by the utility company, then um, that portion of the scope would not be relevant. And so we wouldn't pay for work that was already paid for from another source.
I'm,
Um, if they get a judgment and get reimbursed later by the utility company, I don't know if we can put a condition in that should be refunded to the city. I don't know if like there would be a legal problem with that or if that would um, cause the the decision to be made not in their favor because of the fact that the funds are already claimed by the city if they were awarded.
I
So,
actually think that I'm actually more concerned about the opposite judgment of the
mhm,
attorneys for the consultant saying, "Hey, the city's giving you this money, so there's
right,
no damage to you. There's no claim that you can make on us for this
right.
cost because you already have the money in hand from the city," which is why it actually I'm not an attorney, but it might be good to their case for us to say, we recognize there may be another responsible party. And if they step forward or a judgment is made against
Hmm,
them, we want our money back.
yeah,
And just for that portion, I mean, I think not certainly for the planning, not for the
yeah,
planning portion, but and I don't know if we have any attorneys, but or whether it's worth consulting as the city attorney as to
That's-
whether there is some peril in us giving the money outright if they're going to try and pursue a legal remedy.
yeah. We do have a participant who's watching this meeting right now who is from the East Somerville Main Streets who might have an update on that if you wanted to invite them to participate. Um,
Yes, sure. Please,
okay.
if they're willing to speak, that'd be great.
All right.
We'll put them on the spot.
I'm going to click to allow Lindsay Allen to talk. Lindsay, you can let us know if you'd like to comment on the 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 strategic tactic of putting a funding condition related to the award of funds from another party.
You have to promote her to panelist, maybe.
Hi all, can you hear me?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Great. I thank you so much for letting me speak on this. Just as an update, we do not have kind of any sort of legal pathway forward right now. Not for lack of trying. We've continued to try throughout this period. Um, I I'm not sure it will be a viable path forward. So I I'm not sure. I think we're having hesitancy with anyone um, feeling like they can take on a case this big with companies that are this large. So I'm hesitant to say that this would ever be something that might be successful.
Okay. That's helpful, Lindsay.
Yeah,
And go
but
ahead.
I'm sorry, just to the potential for success aside, and even whether you'll ever have the means to take the case, I don't know, can you speak to whether there's any, because I don't think there's a downside of us saying if they get money from someone else, we want it back, if that never happens. Is there a downside of us of there being an offer of money from us in a potential future case to try and get the money back from someone else.
No, I don't think there is. I think that would be fine. We have discussed a little bit about whether or not if a legal case would move forward, if there would be funds available for the fact that Nicole has been closed now for multiple years, if there would be back payment in that kind of regard. But I think in terms of the pipes specifically, that would not negatively impact it at all. I think the city could be reimbursed if that were the case.
Okay. Lindsay, I recognizing that you are not the applicant, and so I don't want to hold your feet to the fire on this, but it sounds like we're not going to have a final version of this funding award if we vote to award until at least January, given that there are going to be conditions placed upon it based upon a consulting report that we're due early in the new year. Is there a benefit to the applicant in your eyes of us voting on something like this that just kind of has a blank? We're going to have general conditions to add to this later, or does it make sense, Roberta? Maybe I don't know if you have
Yeah,
a feeling on it.
I can clarify a little bit. My intention with what I drafted in the letter tonight was that the committee could recommend the funding. That can go to city council, and then the conditions will be spelled out in the grant agreement.
Okay, and then at that point, it's basically upon the grantee to say, yes, I agree to these conditions, or no, I walk away. This isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. So the point of voting tonight would be to get it before city council faster and to at least have the funds appropriate. Okay, understood. Okay.
I've got one.
No, Michael.
Sorry, I got one clarifying question there. Are we as a committee going to review those funding conditions, or is that something that you would handle, Roberta?
They'll be on the agenda next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that in mind, understanding that we're going to have not a blank check for conditions, but we are going to revisit the conditions conversation next month. That aside, does anybody on committee feel that they would not be ready to take a vote tonight on at least the award of the $74,000 for this proposal? Okay. Hearing none, would anybody like to make a motion relative to this draft recommendation letter that's here?
I'll make that motion, just following up on the last one, that we agree to award the funding request for this applicant, subject to the conditions laid out in the letter that Roberta has placed before us.
And I second that motion.
Thank you.
All
All right, Roberta.
I will call the roll. Mary Jo?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
And David?
Yes.
All right, motion passes, and this project is completed.
So thank you, and thanks for jumping on, Lindsay, and thanks for your advocacy and being engaged with us.
Absolutely. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Very good, everybody. Okay. Let's touch, because I think it's a time-constrained project. Let's go to Kennedy next, the Kennedy Schoolyard. So what's on my mind for this one, just to start the conversation, obviously we know there's a $3 million ask in total, right? That's the aggregate ask in, $1 million from the budget this year, $2 million bonded as proposed. I think we've shown that we could fund the $1 million this year and still have the reserve that we had discussed. We could. The changes, if we were to fund anything more or less than $1 million for this and change the bond picture moving forward, I personally like if we had additional funds in the budget and were able to give more of this funding award now rather than bonded in the future, that would be, in my mind, advantageous because it wouldn't encumber future CPCs for whatever it is, 15, 20 years. Um, that would be a reason why I would love to have this conversation later in the going through all the projects to understand what money is available. But Roberta and I guess the applicants as well have kind of made clear that this is something that they need a decision on or would benefit from a decision on much sooner than that. Roberta, do you want to add any other color context on why we need to give guidance soon?
Yeah, and actually, maybe if Alan is here, I wish that we had John, who is the project manager for this, available this month, but he's away. Alan, do you know if, in fact, they're looking to put the Kennedy School out to bid and that needs to happen next month?
You're
We
muted.
can't hear you. You're muted, Alan.
The goal is to put it out this spring. Yes, ideally the project should have already happened. Ideally, like last year, but they are hoping to put it out to bid this spring.
So if they had the funding committed in March instead of February, would that
Uh, technically, to move forward with the bid, we
Mhm.
do need the project fully funded from
Yeah.
the designer's estimate. Um,
Okay.
I'm trying to think offhand what portion of the budget this is remaining, although it's a significant portion, if not all of it. Yeah, this could potentially throw a wrench in the bid process. There are instances where purchasing could go forward, but it's not the standard process. The standard process is that the project is fully funded before we go out to bid.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Thanks, Alan. And one last clarifying question on timing. Let's say, for example, we were to approve $1 million from our current budget and $2 million bonded for this project tonight. And then let's say come May, we've not received any other projects in the door, and we decide as a committee that we would want to prioritize paying an additional portion of this year's budget into this project, thereby reducing the bond that would encumber, our group for years to come. Is that something that we could do, or is the ship kind of sailed at that point because the bonds will have been issued?
So not necessarily. I think as Roberta mentioned, we wouldn't actually go out to bond until we've incurred expenses. So if
Understood.
we've just signed a contract, most likely we wouldn't, they're going to mobilize in the spring, probably start construction sometime in the spring. Invoices would not roll in. Best case scenario, June or July. I mean, absolute best case scenario. So we would not draw down on the bonds until most likely FY27 anyway. So we could just not actually go out to market for the bonds.
Okay. Understood.
So
That's
a
helpful.
so a potential scenario could be that you approve this version of the funding tonight. They can go out to bid, and then in January or February, when you know exactly how much money is left over after funding all the projects that you want to fund, you could make an amended recommendation to increase the amount out of this budget and decrease the amount that's bonded. Um, so potentially that could be amended before it actually gets used.
Okay. Understood. All right. Very good.
I have
Go
I have
ahead.
a question about the bonding. I noticed in the application that there's a contingency of $250,000, which is a portion to the bonded part of the budget. Why would one do that? Why not have the contingency, which may never be used, in the, paid cash for instead of paying interest on it for 15 years?
That would be a great question for PSEF if we had them here. So unless Alan, you can comment.
We would have to look at the other sources of funds going into the project, but if it's fully coming from the bond or CPA, then it would have to see. And honestly, once the bond is authorized, my team will manage the order of operations of funds. So we would only dip into that if that was the absolute last source of funding that was needed.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, Alan, can you clarify that? I thought that once you borrow $2 million, you're paying the interest on the $2 million for 15 years, 20 years, whatever the term of the bond is, not only after you dip into it. Am I wrong about that?
So to not get too much into the weeds, but what you're voting on is a borrowing authorization from the CPC. And so we will manage that as we incur physical expenses. So, and we have to have all of our cash in by the end of the fiscal year. We do a rough estimate in May or June of what we'll need to cover expenses through the end of the fiscal year. But if we don't need the entire bond, we don't necessarily borrow the 2 million upfront in one shot.
I see.
So in the event that no contingency is needed, you wouldn't draw bonds for it, and the amount that we would be on the hook for wouldn't be $2 million. It'd be whatever it is, 1,850,000.
So,
for example, yeah.
So this is so if I understand, so this is more like a letter of agreement that you can bond up to $2 million.
That's right.
Not that you will bond $2 million. So if that's the case, then even then our projection that we're gonna have to be paying $170,000 a year in debt service is not correct.
It's a worst case, correct?
So that's only okay. So more likely it would be a bunch of smaller bonds than one large bond.
Through the chair or through the committee, yes, it's not necessarily generally speaking, any bond vote you take is, like you were saying, it's an authorization or a commitment that we have permission to borrow. The city will manage the cash flow of our borrowings on an annual basis in totality of, all the CPA projects, all the city's general borrowings. Because if you think about it, like it's only efficient to go out to market once or maybe like twice a year. So it's not like we're constantly borrowing it like every single time we take a vote on every single project. You would just from an underwriting purpose, like that wouldn't make any sense. So we manage the actual cash flow of the borrowing and the borrowing in the open market. And you're simply in the information, the schedules that Roberta showed to you, is that's the max capacity impact of what borrowing to the CPA max capacity would impact your amount available to allocate to other projects. But you're simply voting on an authorization. We will manage the cash flow of the borrowing.
And given the question I tried to raise last month and kind of clarified earlier tonight, what's the difference between the CPC borrowing, bonding it versus the city bonding it itself?
Sure. So the CPC borrowing, if you think about it from a creditor's perspective, that has its own separate and distinct revenue stream. So whereas the general fund can fund any capital project within the city, CPA borrowing can only go towards CPA eligible projects from the CPA revenue stream.
But so if I'm understanding, you're saying the city could pay for it out of general funds. But I'm asking, can't the city bond it instead of the CPA bonding it or being bonded through the CPA?
In theory, it could, but it's more advantageous because we are taking away from other critical projects that will eat up the city's general fund borrowing capacity.
Well, we'll do the same for us, and we're a much smaller entity than the city.
I think so. Last month, when we had this discussion, a point that Alan made was that the city has a number of capital needs that the general fund is already being asked to cover, including the schools and um, the roads. You name it. You have a picture of what the capital budget looks like, and this project would fall pretty low
But
on that
but
prioritization.
but but, but Robert, with all due respect, I feel like that's a different issue. I'm not saying that they would have to decide to use other general funds. I'm saying that the city apply for the bond directly instead of asking us to do it. When the city redid Lincoln Park, you know, they funded it with a $10 million bond that the city purchased, not the CPA. You know, so the city can bond it and then they pay the debt service instead of it coming out of our much smaller budget. That's what I'm trying to figure out is why should it come out of our budget instead of the city paying the debt service on it?
It's just a capital project allocation prioritization. It's every project you're not borrowing on CPA, you have less capacity on the general fund
I
borrowing.
I do understand that, but it's like me telling my friend, I'd like you to, take out this mortgage for me and pay the, the debt, because I'd rather me spend my money on other things.
Could I chime in just from experience
Please.
with a different municipality?
Sure.
One that doesn't have CPA. Um, Municipalities often, and maybe Alan can speak much more knowledgeably on this, they often have far more projects that need to be bonded than they could dare even dive into. I mean, you could point all over the place at things that need to be addressed that are capital. The fact that some municipalities are so fortunate as to be a CPA community opens up an opportunity to slough off some very, very important projects, but also qualify under CPA. And then those can be taken care of in that way so that it frees up the city to tackle things that have nothing to do with CPA and focus the city's primary bonding on that. Now, I'm not speaking that that's what we should do, but this is my experience from having worked with other municipalities. So I understand totally why it would be something that the city would certainly want to encourage because it would free up the ability to tackle other projects with the same bonding money.
That's a great distinction, Mary Jo, and I think that was something I was missing as well. Is that the queue of items that the city is trying to bond for is a fair, Alan, that most, if not all of those, are not CPC eligible, CPA eligible, and that's why this is the opportunity to get one that actually is taken care of via another bucket.
Yes, I want to speak carefully because I'm not trying to unduly influence any committee member, but what committee member Mary Jo said is it's actually hit the nail right on the head. That is why I don't want to name projects. I don't want to unduly influence anyone, but there are high budget, high priority, time sensitive projects that need the general fund, and every project that is CPA eligible that we can take care of is a project that won't get neglected for years and years and years.
I think an interesting distinction too would be to think about what is the mission of the CPC here, and to what extent is the money that we're spending meant for tasks that wouldn't normally be accomplished by the city funding. And because I totally get, especially with open space stuff, it's not like we have private open space owners who are going to be going after funding. So we're sort of like, in some ways, we're vying, different city agencies vying for the same amount of money. It's all city projects. But is there anything in the world of open space funding with a CPC that spending a lot on this, which you could argue, yes, it would be a capital improvement project under a different context, keeps us from realizing some other goal that can't be accomplished with regularly spent city money. And I don't really know that there is anything on that.
Well, but the reason I guess I'm kind of so harking on that is, with all due respect to Ryan's interest in not discussing it, is if Art Farm comes in and wants another $3 million next year per Roberta's estimates, fully almost a third of our open space and recreation money for 15 to 20 years in the future is going to go to debt service on these two projects. And that's what I'm uncomfortable about.
I think I'm a little sensitive to this idea as well. I appreciate that the city is trying to give us visibility. And David, I am very concerned about what you just described. I think that's a really big problem if we take on that much debt. But we don't know the scope of the project. We don't know how many dollars they're asking us. And also, by the way, we don't know what the committee is going to be, right? That future committee with other members might have different opinions about the art farm entirely. And so for us to cast judgment on projects today under some assumption of opinion that we're going to have on an unknown project is kind of, I think, unfair to this project in both positive and negative ways, right? You could say, okay, it dovetails in, it could be a positive, or in the way you're illustrating, it's a negative. Just again, I want to reiterate, I feel the same feelings you're having, David, but I'm hesitant as one member to want to conflate the two projects at this time.
I do agree. I certainly see that point of view. Conversely, it'll be, and it's not going to be probably going to be my problem. It's going to be next, committee members' problem. That if Art Farm comes in asking for what they're asking for, then this committee will be put in the difficult position of having already awarded Kennedy. And now, what are you going to say to Art Farm? And are you then going to lock, so yes, I hear what you're saying, but it's like you can see the train coming, and just saying, well, we're not going to talk about it because the train hasn't arrived yet, doesn't seem responsible.
Well, what if the train gets robbed by barons and there's no more train with loot in it?
Right? Well, but the thing is, but the worst case in that is that we still have more money to spend on other. It's not like we're going to keep the money.
Yeah.
It's just it frees up that money. We're otherwise we're tying it up for a generation.
Yeah.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong. And the reason I keep couching this in the context of, I'm not saying the Kennedy School playground shouldn't be redone. It's just, with all due respect for all the other things the city would like to do, it's a high priority project. It'll be a popular project, but the city has far more, the $170,000 debt service is a far smaller part of the city's budget than it is of our budget. And that's the only point I'm truly trying to bring up. Not that we shouldn't do it, or it shouldn't be done, or that we shouldn't fund the cash portion that they're asking for. It's just is using this percentage of our budget for, when the city, in the end, of course, it's a popularity contest to a certain extent, and the city has to decide, does it want to spend its political capital, telling the population that this is, that this is the way that we should spend money. And I feel to be honest, that it's a little bit more like we're the lower hanging fruit, and it's easier for the city to go through us than to have to make the case, in a larger process that this is a worthwhile, expenditure for the city. And I'm not saying it isn't. But I think the city should say we're willing to have that discussion with the public. Now all that aside, I do support the project, and I'll respect the views of all the other committee members.
Thanks, David. All good points, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'll just say personally, I'm a little spooked by this one as well, just given the dollar amount. It's by far the largest that's come in my time here, and I do, I acknowledge, David, what you were saying, that it's a scary thought having such a big percentage of our pot tied up, and us making that decision that is going to reduce the flexibility of CPC members for the next 15 years or more. I will say, for the record, this is I think, the most letters of support I've seen for a project during my time here. Incredibly well supported. I think none of us are saying that this isn't a worthwhile project, but no, I think your
Right, but
your
but the
questions and
people,
skepticism are well
yeah,
placed.
no, and the people writing those letters of support, they don't care whether the CPC funds
That's
it or
right.
the city funds it.
That's right. That's
You
right.
know, and but it does make the case that the city could have the wherewithal to say this is a really popular project with a lot of support, and we propose to issue, and the city council can issue bonds, to fund it.
Understood. Understood. Any other discussion on this one? I know this is I anticipated this being a tricky one.
It is.
It's sort of, I still going back to feeling like kind of a shell game because open space is the city. There is no other option. So it's, would the city rather spend it this way or that way? It's um, if we if we committed 100% of our budget to debt service, then congratulations, the city will going forward have to pay for everything itself because we're full. So it's sort of like, I think what spooks us is the committing future budgets to it. If we magically could spend 3 million right now, as Ryan is, question about like, um, I think it's the optics of encumbering future decision making. It's more troubling.
So, Roberta and/or Alan, can you just restate? Because just based on where we are, we've only got 5 members here. I know it's a quorum, but every vote will count on this one in a smaller group. Um, all else equal, I would definitely vote to table this discussion until we have more folks on here and we can all continue mulling this over based upon the conversation that we've had. But can you just restate how us not voting on this tonight would affect the project?
Yeah, once the committee votes on the project, I will be submitting it to city council. It takes the better part of a month to go through the city council process. So it will be um the city council's approval will be obtained by the end of January. That means that they could begin to go out to bid in February if you vote on it tonight. If you wait until January to vote on it, then it won't be ready to go out to bid until March. That may mean that they're not actually ready to get underway with construction when school is out in June. So they're racing the clock to be ready to put the shovels in the ground the day the students go home for the summer.
Understood.
I would imagine in the landscaping world that maybe there's an advantage to being early also because people are kind of filling up their summer projects, but I'm not a
Also,
contractor.
just for context, not to pressure one way or the other, but historically speaking, the later you go out into the bidding season, you risk either not getting bids or getting very uncompetitive bids, which may increase the cost if this ask comes back in the future.
Yeah. Or if they have to wait another season to get the project underway, that may also increase the cost.
If we take a vote tonight and it fails, can we have another vote at the next meeting or the meeting after?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for the purposes of going out to bid and keeping this schedule that you've described, awarding anything less than $3 million tonight is not helpful, correct?
Correct. They need the $3 million tonight, but what you can do is amend the decision in a month or two to change the balance of the $3 million.
And with this,
Would the $2 million be locked up for that 15-year term, irrespective, per the way Alan described it, of how much the city ultimately bonds? because we authorized that, total amount.
Meaning, if they end up bonding for $1.8 million instead of two, the authorization to bond for an additional 200,000 would be out there for 15 years.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
That
asking?
we would still have to withhold that money from future awards.
No, thank you. That's a good question. Say, for example, in a scenario where we didn't bond out for the cash, we didn't reimburse ourselves for the contingency, either because we got it from another source, we did it as a pay-go, whatever. We would only be responsible for let's call it 1.8 million for the 15 years. It's actually what you bond, not necessarily what you authorize. But what you authorize is the worst case scenario. That's the limit. That's the max.
If I understood David's question correctly, I think what he's asking is, could they only borrow 1.8 million, but because we authorized 2 million, come back sometime in the future and ask for an additional $200,000?
I'm sorry, you confused me on that wording,
Oh,
Robert.
So,
um,
so
in the
it's
future, I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
so it's kind of like, some of these other projects where we've already approved it. And even though the projects haven't happened, every year we deduct that amount, from what we can award because that project might still happen. So I'm kind of thinking, well, if we're giving the city the authorization to bond $2 million, even if you don't, is that money effectively locked up because we gave you the ability to bond the 2 million?
It it is, but if you think about it, going back to the explanation of how we will actually bond, what you'll see in actuality, and typically what happens in practice is you will see it on a staggered basis because every year we
But
give you
but that but that's not exactly because I think the issue is from like the way Roberta does her budgeting, we have to withhold the full amount that we've authorized, irrespective of whether it's been spent or even will be spent, because
correct. However,
until the project is closed.
yes and no, because every year the debt service number we give you is based on what we've actually borrowed that year. So that's the known amount that that we've taken on that debt. We've actually taken on that debt, not the authorized amount, but the
So
actual debt we've taken on. So for example, that 170,000 is a worst case scenario for the full, what is it, the 2 million, 3 million?
mhm.
However, in FY27, if we only actually bonded for 1 million of that 2 million in FY27, because the project's not going to close out until FY28 or whatever, that first year's payment would not be $170,000. It would be something less.
Right. But Roberta, maybe the question is for you. Would you still have to redline that 170 because of what we approved?
I think when PSUF or when the responsible department tells me that we're done spending money on this project, I
Hmm.
will close it out
And
and
then
stop.
then
Yeah,
you do a correction.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Okay.
I might leave it open until they tell me we're done. Because what might happen is in the future, say in sometime summer of 27, they're wrapping up the project and they discover that they're going to need an extra $200,000 to, do some change order that was
Mhm.
unanticipated. That extra $200,000 is already there in the bond authorization. They wouldn't have to come back to the committee for additional funding.
Okay. But once they've issued a certificate of completion or whatever the equivalent is,
And
then
then I can
then
drop it.
then you could drop it. So even though it wouldn't be for the 15 years, it would be in year 3 or year 4 or
That's
whatever.
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question.
Just remind me if you could, what with if we paid this, what percentage of, because you gave us a thing that combined this with Art Farm, but what percentage of the future of the budget would this project debt service
We'd be
bring?
paying at worst $175,000 per year moving forward. And
That's
just based on what's available to us this year, as an example, we don't know what it will be in the future. If that's 3.7 million.
Well, no,
Yeah.
I think you have to do it as a percentage of the open space and recreation
yeah.
money, not
Yeah.
the total budget, Ryan.
You had a
So
spreadsheet at the beginning that showed
yeah,
that.
Okay.
the two projects together are 30% of the budget, so this would be maybe 12% of the total budget.
So the debt service on this project alone will bring it sort of in the same realm as what we're also already carrying for historic preservation and
Yeah.
affordable housing. Is my feeling, just to be a little conclusion, is that I would probably advocate moving forward with this, even though I feel squishy about it, allowing for the fact that when Art Farm or anything else comes along, that just sort of hems us in more. But we didn't have this discussion when we funded the Somerville Library or West Branch Library or other things. This is a worthwhile project, so there's no question that it needs to happen. And I share a little bit of the squishiness. Like we, at some point, we'll need to set an upset limit for debt on just in general, just like we've set the 750K that we're kind of wanting to kick from year to year. At some point, we have to have a discussion, say how much are we willing to commit for any particular category forever. Right now, with this, I don't think we've reached that limit. So, in principle, I wouldn't have an issue with locking us in for 12% or whatever. But it just going forward, we tighten our pencil for future projects. That's the thing. It's my attitude, at least.
Thanks, Herb.
Did you say tighten our pencils?
Sharpen our pencils.
Oh, I like the idea of tightening our
Oh, I
pencils.
like that. Mixing metaphors. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tighten our.
And sorry, one more clarifying question for me, and I know we need to move towards some sort of resolution here. I had asked before about whether we have additional funds at the end of this fiscal year to reduce the amount that we would eventually be bonding. Alan, you said that yes, if it's done before the costs are incurred and therefore we draw the bonds, yes, you could end up funding more this year and not having it count towards the bonds. Does it work the same? How would it work over the course of the next 15 years, say, if we have a $2 million bond out there, but next year, at the end of the year, we're sitting on $500,000 extra? Can we pay down $500,000 of the $2 million bond that's out there to reduce the debt service we're encumbering the CPC with after that? Sorry, I'm not a muni bond expert.
So,
Maybe there's two scenarios to this question. What if you want to pay down some of the $2 million bond before the costs are incurred, before the bond is drawn? I think that's an amendment to the amount of the bond authorization. But the question, Alan, is if can the CPC pay it down early instead of paying it down over the full 15 years if the bond is already drawn?
That's right.
So thank you. This is an interesting question. I'm glad this is brought up because I don't think we've necessarily thought this through. I don't think we've ever encountered this. And the reason I'm going to hedge my answer a little bit is I don't know where the ask would have to come from. I don't know if the city or PSUF would have to make a request to the CPC to pay down the bond so that it frees up future years, or if the committee could initiate a request to pay down the bond so that you're not passing on debt service future years.
Right.
I'm not sure where that request would need to get kicked off. But
is it even feasible? I mean, can you prepay?
That's what I was going to say.
A bond?
Because a muni bondholder wants their return, and they're going to be getting less in terms of interest rate return if we're paying down the
typically speaking, the short answer is there's many ways to structure bonds, but in a scenario like that, which I think often applies to us, is you can always pay it down, but you're still going to pay the interest. There's no point to it because you would still pay the interest. You'd still be obligated to pay the 15 years of interest or whatever return the investor or the creditor was hoping for.
Right. So there's no benefit.
There's no
Oh,
benefit,
Do
correct?
these bonds become callable? Is it that kind of way? Like when they issue these bonds, it's like guaranteed 10 years, and then after that, it's callable.
There might be a couple we do. I don't think it would be. I don't think it would be in this instance. I would have to check with central finance, like city finance, but I don't know that CPA bonds would get that intricate.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm not 100% certain. I'll definitely check, but I don't know that I've heard of a callable CPA bond. I mean, they're definitely
Okay.
callable bonds, but
Appreciate that. Michael and Mary Jo, where are you guys right now on this? Do you have other things you want to ask about or mull over?
No, I'm clear.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm supportive.
You're supportive. Okay. All right. Well, if nothing else, I mean, like I said, if we're not for the deadline, based on this conversation, I probably would have asked to defer a decision to a future meeting. But in lieu of that, would anybody like to make a motion
I'd
on
I'd
this
like
request?
to suggest that we need two votes tonight, a vote for the current year's funding and a separate vote for the bonding. And I've made a general of a specific condition for this project that is similar to the condition that we applied last year. That the money will be clawed back if they change the use to not a schoolyard.
All right, so I'll move that we award $1 million to the open space reserve for the construction of the new schoolyard with the funding conditions presented in front of us.
I'll second that.
All right, I'll call the roll. David,
Yes.
Michael,
Aye.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Eric.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. And a second motion.
So I'll move that we further recommend bonding $2 million for the same project and same funding conditions.
I'll second that again.
All right, then I will call the roll. David,
I wish you wouldn't ask me. Um, yes.
all right. Michael,
Aye.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
Ryan,
No.
and Eric.
I'll vote yes. I'm glad we got at least one no vote to express our squidginess. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So that concludes your decision for this project. Thank you all for that difficult discussion. Ryan, did you want to do one more project this evening before we move
I guess
on?
I got to defer to my colleagues since we're at the minimum, what's it called, quorum right now. Are folks able to hang on for 15 minutes? You're allowed to say no.
Yes.
Do we have an easy one?
Let's see.
I would
Uh,
suggest
but
I would suggest that the next one be 59 Cross Street. I think that's the next most time sensitive one.
which is Grace Baptist Church, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to
I'm sorry, which one was that on the priority list?
S4HCD. What, I can never remember the acronym. And it's on the priority list. Sorry, it is. It
Oh,
was
I'm sorry. I
number
thought I was sharing screen with you, but I'm not. I'll share the screen so you can see what I'm doing.
It was number 7 of 10, Michael.
Okay. Now I need to make you all disappear so I can see it. Okay. Yeah, this is the project. They're asking for $480,000 to complete the exterior renovations that go along with the project that is already under construction right now.
and those were, I think, their windows and other.
Yeah.
minutia.
Windows is the structural repairs to the belfry, or the bell tower, and
It's all exterior envelope stuff.
Yeah, all envelope.
Okay.
Yeah, exterior window restoration, weatherproofing, and enclosure / protection of towers. They spoke to it in the presentation, but I did just want to highlight that within their proposal, 32% of the overall hard costs is being given to general requirements, general conditions, overhead, and profit. In my world, that's a relatively high percentage. I don't know for this type of work if 32% going to kind of general overhead type stuff is high, but that was something that jumped out at me. I don't think it's going to influence my vote on this one, but it is something that jumped. Anybody else with comments about this one?
I'm sorry.
I appreciate you highlighting that. That is a little bit of a concern now that you bring it to the forefront.
I'm going to go to the proposal itself.
I also don't know if that would really change my vote. I mean, I think my vote most on this project would be swayed by other higher priority projects, either proceeding or not, or having their awards adjusted. I think because I think this is a worthwhile project. I think it's important to the building. So checks a lot of boxes there. We have the budget for it, but I'm a little bit nervous about having a strong decision on my vote on this one because I don't quite know what some of the higher priority projects are going to be.
And the time sensitive nature of this one, Roberta, is just about the building itself. It's not necessarily, we have no timing cliff that we're facing on this one.
There isn't a timing cliff. I put this in the time sensitive category because they are mobilized right now. And if the committee is able to, or if the funding commitment is able to be made sooner while they're still mobilized, they may be able to continue and have the efficiency of working with the contractor who's already on site. I don't know what the timeline is and how soon the funding commitment needs to be made for them to be able to gain that efficiency.
Understood. Okay, so Michael, I'm hearing you saying that maybe this is a timing issue for you in terms of understanding where where other higher priority projects as voted by the group stand. Anybody else with any drawbacks or reservations about funding this project as proposed?
Well, my not very complete notes was that it seemed like the window repair seemed higher priority to me than the belfry work. And I'm kind of struggling now to open the PDF so I can kind of confirm what I was what made me think that. But that also kind of made me think, well, maybe, kind of to Michael's point, if we had to prioritize something or, something had to, wait till later, could we fund the window work and not the belfry work?
They did say in the application, most importantly, the enclosure / protection of the towers, which are open to pigeon nesting, thus creating health concerns. So that actually was their highest priority.
Oh, but okay.
I view this as a fairly higher priority project just because it's exterior envelope stuff. It's a high profile building, and in some ways it's more important than the Elizabeth Peabody House because that's just facilitating an expanded use within it. This is work that, in theory at least, is maintaining the building, keeping it going. Obviously, the windows aren't going to cause the building to fall down, but it's just I don't have a lot of reservations with this. Obviously, if there's an issue with the the budget for it, and if it's too expensive for the work involved, then that would be an issue. I haven't really gone over that in that level of detail.
Yeah, I personally don't see it as an issue. It was just something interesting to note in there, and obviously we always track and have plenty in there about if they're not spending the full amount that we get the claw back or whatever. But yeah, Eric, I'm with you in terms of this is very much a stabilization project of a building that is in rough shape, visibly even from the outside. That I think the proposal is thorough, and they've been a good partner in the past, and I feel like I know where the money is going if we were to award this. Anybody else? Any comments, questions?
This, like
Yep.
the Elizabeth Peabody House, I don't have any specific conditions for this project because they are already under a preservation restriction due to previous funding.
Understood. Okay. Um, well, with that, I'm hearing no further debate on this. Anybody would like to make a motion regarding this draft proposal?
I'll make the motion then that we fund this project subject to the conditions stipulated in the document that Roberta's showing us.
Any
I'll
second? Okay. Thank you, David.
All right, I will call the roll. Michael,
Aye.
Ryan,
Yes.
Mary Jo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Eric.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes, and we have one more project completed this evening.
What are
Thank
we
you all for the
for?
time you've spent in this discussion. Yeah, that's 4 projects. I'm just reviewing. I am screen sharing. I can stop screen sharing.
So
Oh,
I guess the last thing before we jump, Roberta, do we need to do anything as it relates to officers to make sure that I
yes,
or
we
anybody
do.
else can show up next month?
Yes, we do. So a quick review of the committee membership. I did put a table in your meeting packet so you can see what everyone's terms are. Actually, David, you have a reprieve. You are, thanks to the ordinance the ordinance amendment that was passed by City Council this year, you can now, I will pull this up because it's actually very interesting. Um, all of the um, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit lost trying to talk and do this at the same time. Member terms. Okay. I'm gonna share the screen and you can see when your terms are actually ending. Um, Share. And this might be too small for you, and I also can't see you all. Okay. Um, there we go. Okay, so now partial terms are not counted toward the first term anymore. So, David, your first was a partial term. And so you would be able to start a second term in January, ending in 2028. That doesn't prevent you from requesting that a new member of the Conservation Commission take your place if you can no longer serve on the CPC, but you are good to start a second term this January.
So I don't get a gold watch?
Get out this easy.
That comes out of the administrative budget.
Yeah, yeah, we bond for it. Uh,
Roberta,
okay.
Yes,
I think I'm also in a similar spot.
yes. So you are also completing a partial term.
Hmm.
And so your first term will begin January 27,
Okay.
and then second term.
Okay.
So we have Michael McNelly in your first term, legitimately right now, and Rona Fishman, who will be beginning in January, will be taking Heather's place, and that will be her first term. And Carlos is in a full first term. And everyone else will be able to complete a second term. Um, everyone else will be impacted by that ability to add on after a partial first term. So that being said, that's what our committee membership looks like right now. Um, so we'll have, with the exception of replacing Heather with Rona, we'll have the same committee composition continuing in January. But we do need officers this evening. So right now, we have Ryan as chair and Eric as the vice chair, and members can serve up to 2 consecutive years in the chair role, being elected for each year individually. So Ryan, you would be eligible to step up as chair again this year if anyone wanted to nominate you and elect you as chair.
Would be
I would
happy.
like to. I would
Oh.
like to nominate. Oh, sorry, Ryan.
No, I was just gonna say I would be happy. I would be happy to serve again if folks would have me.
He's already making his acceptance speech.
No.
And
Ryan,
I would like to nominate Ryan to serve as chair in the upcoming year.
Thank you.
Mhm.
second
Second?
that.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. I will call the roll. David?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Mary Jo?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. And we need a vice chair.
Eric, you want to do it again?
I'll be it again, sure, unless somebody else wants to do it. I'm fine. It's kind of low effort so far.
Don't say that.
You're gonna jinx Ryan here. No.
All right. Let me call. I need a motion and a second.
All right. I'll make a motion that Eric be the vice chair.
And
All
I
right.
second it.
All right. I'll call the roll. David?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Eric?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
And Mary Jo?
Yes.
Great. So we have our chair and vice chair.
Congratulations. Thank you guys for your service.
Thank you. Thanks for being a great group. This is really great.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know this is a terrible time of year to ask for a very long meeting, and I really appreciate the 5 of you who were able to be here this evening to get the business done. I had a couple of other things that I wanted to mention. Consultant project, I've already mentioned that. We'll be meeting with the committee in January, and we have our social gathering on January 12th.
All right.
Is the final date. I proposed the Hollows since it's brand new, just open, but I haven't made a reservation yet. So email me if you have any other suggestions for a backup location, or if you would rather not put the Hollows first. And
January 12th?
Yes, January 12th.
All right, I'll enter that. I guess we're not going back to Daddy Jones, sadly.
Yeah, it's not time. They're wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we got to try it once before they ended.
Yeah. 12 looks okay.
Great.
Okay. What else, Roberta? Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. Great. Well, with that, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right, I'll call the roll. David?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Eric?
No, wait, yes.
Aye.
Never. Does that ever
Ryan?
happen?
Yes.
Mary Jo?
Yes.
Great.
Well,
Thank
often
you
that
all.
refused to vote to adjourn has kept their meeting open forever. What happened?
I don't think you'd have a quorum once everyone leaves.
Yeah, right.
I'm regretting
Thanks,
this
guys.
vice chair appointment.
All right.
All right,
Good
y'all.
night, everyone.
All right.
Thanks.
You all.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for squeezing this
Thanks,
in.
Alan.
Oh, and we don't get to give Heather the send off, but well,
Oh, yeah.
On the 12th, hopefully she'll be there.
oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.